Welcome to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. Today, CIBC Wood Gundy investment advisor Ross Clark talks about the big bite taken out of Bitcoin. He also runs down the action on the markets this week and the Canuck buck. Trends Journal publisher Gerald Celente comments on a wide range of topics, including why gold and silver prices haven't skyrocketed, are cryptocurrencies here to stay, and could the loonie surpass the value of the U.S. greenback? Inc. Research's Ted Dixon weighs in on BC's financial future under an NDP Green government, and how the Trudeau government's attack on small business has given the Tories a great weapon to fight the next election with. Plus, at the end of the show, we'll have company showcase updates from American Manganese CEO Larry Reaugh and GlancePay.com President Penny Green. We'll talk to Ross Clark right after this.
I'm Larry Reaugh, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, AMY, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Reaugh, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ross Clark. He's an investment advisor at CIBC Wood Gundy in Vancouver. Welcome back to This Week in Money, Ross.
Nice to be with you, Jim.
A big bite taken out of Bitcoin.
It has been. This was the bubble that was going to burst. It was a matter of when. And at the middle of August, it looked as though it still had legs on it. By the time we got to the end of August, the daily, the weekly, the monthly charts all went into overbought mode. When we get a trifecta like that, probability is you're going to get a reversal. And here we are. The Chinese government has decided that they want to start clamping down on Bitcoins, and all the various types that are out there. It looks as though they're going to have difficulty having any new ones, and some of the old ones are going to maybe have to pay back some of their original investors. The bottom line is it's a classic bubble. All the signs were there. We've now corrected 36, we've given back 36% off the top as far as Bitcoin itself is concerned. The Bitcoin Investment Trust, the GBTC, which trades pink sheets in the States, and it's one of the few that we can actually do some good charting on, it's now down 55% off its high. And this now gets it into the category where you start to look for it to thrash around. And you'll probably hear about days where Bitcoin might be up 5 or 10%, and a few days later it'll be back down 5 or 10. So you're going to get into that thrashing mode. I think that the best and easiest part of that move is clearly behind us right now. Maybe it has to regroup. That takes months, maybe 6 months, a year before the next leg might happen in there. But it's something at this point that for the average investor, I think they just stand back and stay away from it.
Yes, everybody's familiar with the story of the 12-year-old kid who bought Bitcoin at 25 cents and turned out to be a millionaire because of it. But good times don't happen for everybody.
No, they don't. And by the time, and I had a prime example of someone who approached me 2 weeks ago and said that on paper they've taken $20,000 up to $37,000 in the previous 2 weeks, and in reality, with their real money, it had made a few $100s, but they were ecstatic about how easy it was to make money in this sector. And this is somebody who hadn't ever traded. Very, very much reminiscence of the stories were heard at the end of 99, first quarter of 2000 regarding the .com. So, as I say, easy days have come and gone. There will be all the great stories of those who made a lot, but there are far more stories about those who will have lost in the last couple of weeks.
Other metals, how are they doing?
It's interesting, with the two hurricanes coming through, and second with Irma being really built out of proportion as far as the media was concerned, you had all this anxiety out there, and classically, if you have an event that is well publicized ahead of time, by the time it gets there, it's old news. It's gone from page 16 to page 1, and then it's above the fold on page 1. And so here you have all the safe haven items, the precious metals, and even the base metals moving up into a week ago. The bond market, the treasury market, the safe haven had a real flight to quality into it. And as it turned out, for all that, we feel sorry for clearly all the hundreds of thousands of people who have been affected, the fact is that it was less than the media had led us to believe was sitting out there. So the market had its classic reaction back up, and the precious metals and the bond market have given back their gains. So, I think once again, people have to learn from it. The black swans are the things that catch us off guard. But when you've got an item that has been out there, well advertised ahead of time, what you want to do is take advantage of those kind of situations rather than just sit under a rock.
The Canadian dollar still around the 82-cent mark. Will the Canadian dollar remain strong, or is it just a case of the Canadian dollar looks good because the U.S. dollar is weak?
Well, the US, both currencies reversed a bit on the week this week. Canadian dollar topped out with the bottom of the U.S. dollar a week ago Friday, and has had a mild correction, especially if you look at the Canadian dollar relative to the euro or the yen. The yen has really fallen out of bed since having a false breakout a week ago. So Canadians being held in place, I think, reasonably well right now. I thought that this level we got up to at 82 and change was about all that we should get as far as this leg's concerned. And the one item that, if anything, was holding us back, if you can say that at all, was the crude oil. And now you've got crude oil playing with the $50 level. So, maybe the Canadian's going to hold up better than we expected. But I think in reality, it's the U.S. dollar index that we need to have our close eye on. The index itself sits around the 92 range, maybe 92 and a quarter. 93 is the important resistance. If it can get up through there, then I think anything that you see that's priced in U.S. dollars, whether that be the gold market, the copper market, any of these other currencies, they'll start to take it on the nose.
Ross, thanks a lot for being on the show.
Always nice to be there, Jim.
My guest has been Ross Clark. He's an investment advisor at CIBC Wood Gundy in Vancouver. Coming up, Trends Journal publisher Gerald Celente, next on This Week in Money.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead-zinc-silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineered gold mine in the Atlan District of Northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. We're speaking with Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal, available online at trendsjournal.com. He's speaking to us from historic Kingston, New York. Gerald, it's great to have you back on This Week in Money.
Well, thank you, Jim.
Gerald, the U.S. markets continue to go higher. What do you see ahead?
Well, I've been on your show a lot of years, and we were the first that I know of that after Trump got elected, we did a 180 on our forecasts and said this is the beginning of a bull market. And it is. We saw $1 trillion already $2 trillion, added to the U.S. stocks since he's been elected back in November, and the markets keep hitting new highs. And there's going to be a correction, probably even to the extent of 10%, because you never have a rise this quickly and without a lot really behind it. Earnings are stable and good, but not to the levels of valuations, PE ratios that exist. So there'll be a pullback. But we don't see a crash unless there's a real wild card. And of course there's no wilder card than the Trump card. But absent a wild card, and again, wild cards are either man-made or made by Mother Nature, as we just saw this last round of earthquakes, hurricanes, and cyclones around the globe. So you can never predict these. That's why nobody can predict the future. But as the trends go, we see the markets continuing to go higher long term.
The world is in turmoil. I guess North Korea the best example. So if it is in turmoil, why aren't gold and silver flying higher?
Well, because the turmoil that we're talking about isn't global turmoil. North Korea is a threat to no one. There's a country with a GDP about almost half the size of West Virginia's. You got a population about the size of Texas. And they're not going to attack anybody unless America attacks them, and I don't believe they're going to. So we're not going to see gold prices spike unless it's really global turmoil. I'm talking, World War III level. I'm talking about United States against Russia or a major power, Japan China. Japan was the last one until we started doing business with them. Now everything's okay. That was World War II. And of course, like Vietnam too. Gotta hate those Vietnamese until we start doing business with them. The hypocrisy. But anyway, you're not going to see gold. These are only temporary spikes. You will not see a geopolitical incident raise gold prices unless it's major. And we haven't hit the major yet, and hopefully we never will.
Is the U.S. dollar now subject to a so-called weak dollar policy?
Well, yes, the weak dollar policy is that, for example, they've just announced that they're going to hold back in the debt limit in the United States. So that means the Federal Reserve just keeps printing money. The dollar is going to stay weak as long as interest rates are down where they are. Interest rates have to go up significantly. I mean, if you adjust for inflation, since they began raising interest rates, 10 years ago, they only raised them 3 times since. In that 10-year period, even if you use the inflation number that's rigged in the United States, it's up like 21% over that period. And so if they raise interest rates another, 25 basis points, it's not even accounting for inflation. So until they raise interest rates, the dollar is going to stay weak. So it's not being done purposely in a sense to weaken the dollar. It's being done purposely to keep the Ponzi scheme going, and that is the stock markets and merger and acquisition activity that allows it to continue because they're borrowing money for virtually nothing.
Could the Canadian dollar surpass the U.S. dollar in value?
Yes, it could. The Canadian dollar could surpass the U.S. dollar if, and it's the big if commodity prices, particularly oil prices, go higher, and it boosts the Canadian GDP. Absent that, we don't see it.
Is the price of copper a bellwether for the global economy? It wasn't that long ago in the past that it was around $2. It went up to $3.14 and has since fallen a bit. So is copper really a good indicator of what's happening out there in the real world?
It's a good indicator, but there's always speculation. So, as you mentioned, copper's up, 60% from its low. And then recently, it's dropped in the last several days about 5%. But even taking that 5% into account, that's still high. Yes, it is an indicator. And they call it an indicator because it's used in so many different areas of industry, whether it's high tech or heavy industry. So it's showing that countries like China particularly are using more and more copper. So it is a good indicator, and again, these markets, the commodities markets, the futures markets, are highly speculative. But on the grander scale, copper would not have gone up that much if there wasn't demand for it, and a number of other commodities have been going up as well. So I would suggest that copper is playing the Dr. Copper role.
What is your global-nomic view?
Well, a global-nomic view, of course, global-nomics is making connections between different fields. And so, for example, one of our sayings is opportunity misses those who view the world through the eyes of their profession. So if you're looking at economics only by numbers and not looking at geopolitics, changes in the family, social change, environmental, on and on and on, you're going to miss the global-nomic view. The global-nomic view on the broader scale right now is that we are in the 21st century. Go back to the 20th century. Totally different. You know, it was a big deal when they had radio and then TV. And then near the end of the 20th century, you started the Internet world. And you go back to the 90s. I mean, the Internet wasn't anything like it is now. I mean, you know, I remember watching, you know, videos on the Internet with these stuck figures barely moving. And there was questions whether or not online shopping would really take hold. So in the global-nomic view, we are in a new century. The 20th century was as different from the 19th century as the 21st century is to the 20th century. So again, go back to the 20th century and the 19th century. They were still doing horse and buggies in the 19th. There was no such thing as aircraft. And automobiles just started happening at the end of the 19th. So the global-nomic view is get ready for something really, really big. Dynamic changes that we haven't even seen yet.
Is the world facing a shortage of key minerals?
Not yet. You know, it's kind of like what they said about peak oil. What happens is there are key minerals, and then some that were key are no longer key. So coal, for example, not key anymore. Other natural resources, oil may be one of them, that may not be key anymore. So right now we don't see that shortage. It may happen in years to come, but right now there might be a couple in a few industries. But even when that happens, they'll find alternatives. Again, you know, the human mind doesn't stop inventing, so we don't see it as a crisis level right now. And of course, of all the key minerals, you know, and all the key commodities, the major one is clean water, and that's going to be that's really essential. And as we know, with the dramatic changes in so many instances of climate, again, whether or not you believe in climate change isn't the issue. All we say is that if you dump trillions of tons of poisons into the earth, into the water, and into the air, do you think it'll have a negative effect? So again, of all of the key minerals, we see water and clean air as the two really ones where the world is going to face a shortage.
One of the very first things President Trump did was rescind an Obama law that forbade the dumping of coal waste into waterways. How do you feel about him removing that law?
Well, there's a lot of stupid laws that they've rescinded, and this is just one of them. I mean, why would anybody be in favor of that? So, but again, Trump does a lot of this stuff to please his base, and the fact is that they're producing less and less coal, and less of it will be moving online. But again, very important to put into context, even as we go into alternative energies, and we're talking about coal. I mean, you got 19th and 20th century, as I was mentioning before. You know, coal was the prime, energy source back in the 19th century. But even with all the developments in oil and gas and electric and on, you're still using coal. So things never go away completely in some industries. They just have a lesser of a major impact. But again, it's only stupid what moron would want to dump poisons into the water? Well, the morons that are running governments because they allow it.
President Trump wants to lower taxes in the U.S. Meanwhile, taxes are being raised in Canada. Will Canada lose competitiveness going forward?
You know, these jerks that keep raising taxes so they can keep living in the political lifestyles that they've been accustomed to. When are people going to grow up that they have a bunch of morons, whether it's Canada, the United States, UK, Germany, France, name the country, running and ruining their lives? What little clown comes up with we have to keep our freak show going, so we're going to raise taxes and put pressure on you, the little people, because here's what we do as politicians. We suck up and bow down to the big numbers guys, the corporations, who give us money called payoffs in the real world, but in your stupid little world of the major media and the propaganda that they teach you from grade school to PhD, we call them campaign contributions. Taxes keep hurting growth. And the only tax breaks they give are to the bigs. Look what's going on in the United States with this billionaire Bezos. Oh, bragging that he's going to open up another Amazon big center and asking for tax breaks. Hey, Gatzone, you're worth how many billions of dollars? And we got to give you a tax break so you can make more? Grow up, everybody. You're getting shafted. And if you like to keep getting shafted, keep voting for the political parties you vote for. And in the meantime, when you walk into the polling booth, don't forget to bow down so you can get it to up you nowhere, because that's what they're doing to you with more taxes. You got it?
Is it any coincidence that the big banks in Canada contribute the same amount of money to the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party?
Again, I just said it. Well, it's banksterism. The banks are running the world. Go back to Jesus Christ chasing the money changers out of the temple. What's changed? The names. J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs gang, Merrill Lynch mob. Nothing has changed. And the people see it in front of them, but they lack the courage to fight it, because if they didn't lack the courage to fight it, they wouldn't be voting for the same criminals and murderers that they call Democrats and Republicans in this country, and you got your own names in your country.
We'll have more with Gerald Celente next on This Week in Money.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the U.S. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the U.S. and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. We're speaking with Gerald Celente, the publisher of the Trends Journal. Gerald, what do you feel is going to happen with NAFTA?
I think there's going to be some changes done in NAFTA. You look at the Trump crowd who's running this, Lighthizer and Mnuchin and Ross. I mean, these guys, you know, they know their business. And NAFTA's a rotten deal. It's put so many little people out of business, particularly the farmers in Mexico. It's only helped the big businesses. So there's going to be a retrenchment. And again, you just look at the numbers. You know, we used to have a positive balance of trade with Mexico, and now, you know, we're billions, billions, and billions negative. So I think there's going to be a reworking of it at some level.
Trump has said Canada is not a problem. Do you think we're not being treated as a problem at the negotiating table?
I think there's going to be a deal made. I think everybody understands it. And there's always a lot of political talk and a lot of political bluster. But I really don't see it being a end-all type of negotiation. there'll be a meeting of the minds and a meeting of the bottom line on it.
Gerald, would NAFTA be better if it was a one-page agreement? Whatever you have, ship it here. Whatever we have, we'll ship it there, and we're not going to charge duties or taxes on it?
Well, I don't know how simple it should be, but what I would suggest is that we go back to the way it was before, and that's the way I look at it. It's what worked before. For example, they used to have a thing called the chicken tax, and that came in under President Johnson back in the 60s. What happened was the United States was flooding chickens into Germany and into Europe, but particularly Germany, and putting the small farmers out of business over there and the big ones in Germany. So they put a chicken tax coming in. So in retaliation, Trump put a tax on those, remember those Volkswagen buses coming in? 23 or 25%. And they were still selling Volkswagen buses in this country. And that tax stayed until Bill Clinton did NAFTA. So you need to protect your interests if you want to keep your country living at a higher level. So I believe that there should be some type of taxes and some kind of restrictions. For example, I mean, when dealing with China going back, when it really started to happen, what are we doing? We're buying products from slave labor countries that manufacturers, no longer manufacturers, they're getting it made over there. They just mark up and then sell them to us at a marked up price. So if you want to have a burgeoning middle class, make it at home. It goes back to buy local. If you could buy local, why not make it local? This whole thing about globalization, when you look at the facts, the numbers are there. The rich got much richer, and everybody else got much poorer. I mean, I'm not making this number up. 8 people in the world have more money than half the world's population combined. So that's what globalization has done. So if you want to reverse it, you can see what has to be done.
Are cryptocurrencies here to stay?
We believe so. There's going to be some dramatic changes, as we've seen, and particularly, and we've been right on the money with this, on the crypto money as well, on saying that they were going to grow, but they were also subject to countries making laws that would diminish their popularity, like was just announced in China recently, and you saw the price of Bitcoin dive. And because they said they were going to, start making it legal in certain areas. Very important to put this into context. The Chinese yuan is at it gained a lot against the dollar, over 6% in the last, several months, last year. And their export volume is down. So does China want a weaker yuan so they could produce more and sell more overseas? For them to do that, of course, again, the yuan has to be weaker. Go back to 2016 when the yuan was in a dive. What happened? The Chinese people started buying Bitcoin as their currency got devalued. So when China puts restrictions on Bitcoin dealing, this is one of the reasons why, we believe. Then you heard J.P. Morgan Chase bankster Jamie Dimon come out recently and saying that Bitcoin was a fraud, and he compared it to the tulip mania back in the day, the Dutch tulip mania. And then Max Kaiser, who I respect very highly, whose show is on RT, made a statement, many of them, regarding Dimon's comments. And Max Kaiser, by the way, is the first person I know that called Bitcoin a winner when it just began. And this is Max Kaiser's quote. Quote, Bitcoin makes banks, essentially price gouging intermediaries and socially unacceptable leeches, obsolete. Bankers rightfully fear for their jobs as Bitcoin replaces them, end quote. So that you're going to, the point that I'm making is you're going to have pressure from the banks to manipulate the price of Bitcoin, talk it down, bring it down, and the governments that want to protect their worthless fiat currencies to stop the cryptocurrencies. And also, but as the world goes cashless, and people no longer have a connection to the coin of the realm, or in God we trust, in the sense of the United States, they're going to be more and more acceptable to purchasing and investing in bitcoins. However, saying that, the bottom line is the government prohibits them. That's where they're going to go. But we see long-term, there's a life for crypto.
How is Main Street USA doing?
More of the same. Nothing really. The average person is hurting. 78% of the people have no money in case there's an emergency. Like $1,000 in the bank or something. It's all the money's going to the top. Again, I'm not making these numbers up. From Obama's 2009 to the time he left office, depending on whose numbers you're looking at, 95% of the wealth went between either the 1% or the top 5%. So for the average person, they're going deeper in debt. Credit card debt's building at new highs. Have auto loans and student loans. So it's not happy days here again.
Is real estate peaking in the U.S.?
It's peaking at a number of levels, particularly the highest level. But we don't see the bubble that we saw in 2007 when it burst. And again, we were among the first to call that. We even took out the domain name, the Panic of 08 in 2007. You don't have those subprime mortgages that you had before. So yes, there's over-speculation. The bubble will burst at some point. Prices will go down, but long-term they'll go back up. So we don't see that crises in the United States. You probably have a bigger one up in Canada than in the U.S. And then again in other markets as well. Even look at Britain with their Brexit, and everybody thought the markets were going to collapse dramatically. They didn't. But you had a lot of overbuilding, and so there'll be a readjustment, definitely. But we don't see a dynamic crash of the past at this time.
Are U.S. banks tightening credit?
The banks want to loan as much as they can, and credit has tightened up somewhat. But again, what's really going to determine whether or not banks are going to loan more is where interest rates go. And as long as interest rates stay low, the banks will do what they can to make money. And the banks also want a little higher interest rates so they can make more money. And these low and negative interest rates in other countries are a burden to banks because they can't jack up interest rates to make more money. So I think what you see is what you get so far. And the banks, I don't think, are going to tighten up credit too much. And it's more of the same.
It's interesting. In Canada, we just had a central bank hike in interest rates. The big banks were quick to boost the price of your mortgage. But I noticed they weren't quick to improve the income you get from your savings account.
Exactly. And that's the point that I was making. This is a war on savers, by the way, these low interest rates. Never been done before. And once upon a time when I was a young boy, I used to hear my parents, may they rest in peace, saying, so-and-so, they just retired. They put their money, they had their money in the banks, and they used to get a thing called interest. And they retired on the interest. Of course, they'd moved to Florida in those days. And now you don't get any money for we the little people. Again, this has been one big Ponzi scheme with quantitative easing, negative zero interest rate policy to keep the Ponzi scheme going so you could keep boosting the equity markets and merger and acquisition activities so the bigs could get bigger, the rich could get richer, and everybody else could get poorer. The numbers are there. That's not, just a statement of mine. It's a fact.
What are the latest trends in technology?
Some of the ones to really start looking at are, as we see it, it's with this whole electric vehicle movement. Right now, and we've been writing about this a lot in the Trends Journal, one of the issues with electric vehicles is that they're using a technology from the 1800s, about 1800, batteries. But there's a big push, particularly coming out of China, for NEVs, new electric vehicles. They're dumping billions of dollars into technology in China because they know they need to clean up their pollution problems. So we believe that there's going to be a new technology coming out in that area beyond what they have now. And that's one really to look at because currently when you're looking at batteries and electric vehicles, we don't see the growth opportunities that they're talking about now using the current technologies. Having said that, there's so much now going into new technology in that area. That's the one to look at. As a matter of fact, the environmental minister in Germany just criticized the German auto companies for not doing more in electric and other clean fuel vehicles. The reason the Germans aren't doing it is not because of what she said, they don't want to do it. These are the Germans. And anybody ever hear of Einstein? The Germans aren't stupid. They're one of the greatest inventors in the world for centuries. They're not investing in electric vehicles because of where the technology is. So I believe one of the big trends that we're looking at is going to be new alternative energies for motor vehicles.
What are the latest health trends?
One of the big ones it's going back to the past, whether it's with cannabis and people finally understanding that if you could feed the earth, you can heal the earth with what Mother Nature gives us. So now you're going back to natural healing. And matter of fact, in other countries, they're bringing back more and more studies with mushrooms and how they can help people with certain ailments, particularly mental ailments. So we're going to see more and more breakthroughs in this area. And these jerk politicians, these little morons with their big mouths that keep telling us about the dangers of marijuana and their stupid, moronic war on drugs. How about a war on the drug companies? How about the opiate epidemic that was caused by them? That doesn't come near to what getting high with a joint does. And then you got these little, could you use the word wankers in Canada, telling us the dangers of marijuana while these little clowns line up to take money from the drug companies so they could sell their killer drugs to the people? Look at the opiate epidemic sweeping the country, mostly the United States. Yeah, we're number one in obesity and number one in opiate addiction. So it goes back to natural, and I don't need some little jerk politician to tell me differently. Matter of fact, I have an honorary doctorate of law from the National University of Health Sciences for the work I've done over the decades in integrative and complementary medicine. Go natural, whole health healing. It's a big trend. And the millennials are going to be buying into it the biggest.
Is clean water a trend to watch?
Again, when we said before, what are the most precious minerals and commodities? It's clean water. Again, the earth is being poisoned. Like if you dump trillions of tons into the earth of poisons, into the water and into the air, you think it's going to have a negative effect? Look at the population. What are we over 7 billion people. Go back to 1900. You know how many people were on the planet? About 1.5 billion. So as the planet keeps getting bigger, the resources are going to shrink more. And so of course clean water is going to be. Matter of fact, I was one of the first people, as far as the records show, that predicted the bottled water trend back in my book, Trend Tracking. And I had forecasted in 1988. And that's when, there was Perrier and a couple of others.
Is there a deliberate trend to make people sick and stupid through diet, medicine, and the environment?
No, people are doing it themselves. People know what to do. People ask, look at the obesity problem. What should you do about obesity? How about stop eating crap? How about stop drinking crap? And how about eating less and exercising more? I mean, what more do I have to say? You are what you eat. And that's all it is. And it's a junk food nation. So as they keep talking about all of these trends, people going healthy, it's a small minority that are buying healthy. If they were buying healthy, you think they'd be opening up McDonald's, Burger Kings, and one fast food joint after another under different names now, and eating the same kind of foods that lack in basic nutrition. So again, it's very simple. Stop eating crap, stop drinking crap, and stop, exercise more, and it's it. Eat less. It's simple. And again, they're making a big deal of this. Jim, they say that pigs can't fly. You've heard that expression.
Of course.
You been to the airport lately?
I get what you're saying. President Trump siding with both the Republicans and the Democrats. Is this the beginning of a new trend?
It should be. I mean, what moron? What jerk? I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. How about I'm a human being and I want the best for us? Party labels. Grow up. What people, I don't mean you, I mean those stupid morons that make an issue with this. He's siding with the Democrats. Well, you mean you're siding with, which group of murderers and thieves are you siding with? And I say murderers and thieves like I would say Bloods and the Crips, because they start wars based on lies and kill millions, and they steal our money based on lies to bail out the too big to fails and too big to jails. So who's he siding with? Which group of criminals? So anyway, the political parties. How about no political parties and doing what's best for all of us?
How is your Occupy Peace project going?
OccupyPeace.us is not getting a lot of traction. For example, you just heard that the United States is sending more troops into Afghanistan, the longest war in American history. You hear any peace protests? Any of them? Not a one. We get very little support, and you need money to make these things happen. When I launched Occupy Peace, and we had Ralph Nader, Cindy Sheehan, Dr. Robert Thurman, Gary Null here in Colonial Kingston, and closed down the Four Corners. It cost a lot of money, in six figures, and I had to go into my retirement account to make it happen. I put my money where my mouth is. I'm not one of these people who just talk and do nothing. So there's no peace movement in the United States. The people, they get out to the streets on these wedge issues, and that's about it. And then they go home and they forget about it. So the murderous wars in the United States continue. No peace movement at all. People don't talk about it. Hey, look, 9/11 just happened. Total blackout in the American press. Don't believe me? Google it up. And go to our YouTube. We did a piece on it. We just posted it on how there was absolutely no coverage at all of 9/11. So they start wars, murder millions in the name of lies, and continue. And peace is not a priority. No peace on earth, goodwill toward men.
The most
That'd be equal, yeah.
The most historic Four Corners in the world were attacked. Why? And where are they?
Well, they're right here in Colonial Kingston, New York. It's the only place on each corner where there is pre-Revolutionary War stone buildings on each corner. And I own 3 of them. And I bought them not for real estate investment, because I cherish being an American in terms of what the Constitution and Declaration of Independence represent, not what the politicians have done to it. And I'm very familiar with the genocide committed by politicians in the wars, from the Civil War to the foreign wars. But it could not be me if I wasn't born in the Bronx and was given the opportunity to be who I want and think for myself. That's why I bought these buildings. And one of our carriage steps in a building that dates back to 1700 is all defaced with anti-Trump graffiti, as are the other buildings and the bluestone sidewalks all around the area. And we've made this noted to the world media, but got very little coverage. And they've destroyed so much with this. We can't get it off in a lot of places. And if it was racist, if it was anti-Semitic, it'd be big news that they defaced these historic corners of the United States with this kind of graffiti. But because the media hates Trump, and you know me, I mean, you hear me speak, I'm no Trump fan. It has nothing to do with that. But because the media is so anti-Trump, they don't care about it.
If World War III happens, where will the theater be?
We think the next one is going to happen in Iran. You're seeing it building up with statements coming out of Israel by Netanyahu, saying that Iran is building, missiles and chemical warfare capabilities in Syria, and with Hezbollah to attack Israel, and Israel's bombing Syria. Just we're in there again. And then you have people in the United States, Bolton and others, coming out against Iran, the Trump administration against Iran. We believe Iran is going to be the flashpoint, the trigger point, and we believe that Israel is going to be the one that's going to be pushing this the hardest.
Could identity politics lead to civil wars around the planet?
I mentioned before about there was no protests about the increased wars in the United States, particularly Afghanistan, into Syria, on and on. Identity politics is all that the people are interested in. They call America a racist nation because a couple of clowns at Charlottesville took to the streets. America is not a racist nation. A racist nation does not elect a black president, with high hopes of hope and change you could believe in. A racist nation doesn't have two attorney generals that are black, as Holder and Lynch were. A racist nation doesn't have a Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Susan Rice. A racist nation doesn't have the head of Homeland Security under Obama as black. It's not a racist nation doesn't have a Supreme Court justice as black. So this is a big lie, and it's the media that's doing it. It's the media that's dividing Americans because they're prostitutes. They're interested in ratings. And a prostitute is a media whore that gets paid by their corporate Johns or their Washington whoremasters to say what they're getting paid for to say. So this isn't a racist nation, but yes, it is dividing the nation. And again, the other issues such as ongoing wars that are killing millions and costing trillions, let's not talk about that in the news. Let's only talk about a couple of crazy people in a country of 320 million people and make that look like the entire nation.
Are driverless vehicles a trend?
We don't see it happening. And you're seeing Apple just made a big reversal in their movement on it, and they're just going driverless on their campuses from point A to point B. We've been the first to say that this is going to be a long-term agenda for the auto industry. And when you look at the auto industry, they're not very inventive to begin with in the first place. Yes, you have driverless going from point A to point B, but not in mass traffic. It's just not going to happen. And we think the auto industry is wasting hundreds of billions of dollars on this at this time, and we don't see it happening. Look, they can't. Airbags keep exploding. You can't get your ignition switch to work. One thing after another. Your automatic door lock is giving you problems. The cars have become too computerized and too electrified. They can't solve it at these levels. We don't see driverless going in the way they're saying it. We see it in warehouses, on mining sites, from point A to point B, bus routes, maybe even truck routes at some point, but not to the level they're talking about.
Gerald, how can people find out more about the Trends Journal?
They could go to trendsresearch.com, trendsresearch.com. Guaranteed the only place, money back guarantee. It's the only place where you read history before it happens, and the new issue is coming out this week.
Gerald, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
Thank you, Jim.
My guest has been Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal, available online at trendsjournal.com. He was speaking to us from historic Kingston, New York. Coming up, Ted Dixon, next on This Week in Money.
Lotus Ventures, Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario. With grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold, a drill program will commence this spring to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork. For more information, visit our website, rmroyalty.com.
AMY.V Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, AMY.V's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at abnresources.com.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. We're speaking with Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of inkresearch.ca, Canada's first online financial news and research service providing insider news and knowledge to investors. Welcome back to the show, Ted.
Well, thanks for having me back, Jim.
The news that we've just received in British Columbia is that Nexan is ending its preliminary plans for an LNG plant in BC. We've already heard from Petronas that they have no plans to build an LNG plant in BC. What kind of news is this for our economy, and what does it say about our new NDP/Green government?
Well, of course, it's disappointing news for the energy industry in Canada. I mean, I think a lot has gone into this decision. I don't think the NDP Green victory is the sole factor here. There's been a upheaval in the natural gas market, as your listeners know, over the past few years with the onslaught of fracking in the U.S. I think that has played into it as well. But all these decisions are based off of risk reward, and when you have a government that is not perceived as being there for you or a wild card, that just adds more risk to a project and makes it harder for investors to give it a green light. So it's disappointing. We're really kind of now having to hope that the Canadian LNG project backed by Shell goes ahead. That's I think the last big one that's still in the race. So, but as long as we get one, Jim, that would be a big boost for the industry. And I certainly hope the new government redoubles their efforts to assist in laying the groundwork, and the investment mood to make that investment decision more likely to happen. Get the green light than a red light. So it's disappointing, but it just goes to show how difficult times are in the energy industry right now, and it's going to remain that way, I'm afraid, for a few more years at least.
The new Premier of BC is raising the income tax for anyone making over $150,000. How much additional tax revenue would that generate?
Well, Jim, that's a really interesting question, because we saw what happened in Ottawa when the Trudeau government was elected, and they raised taxes on the wealthy, to use their spin. And what happened was, tax accountants got to work, and they figured out ways, in some cases that, maybe we can reduce that by, diverting some money into small business setups. So a couple of years later, the government, figured this out. They've just gone over here, to reduce their taxes. Well, now we have to take a sledgehammer to small business, and so what we're getting on the federal side is, the hammer's coming down on a lot of small businesses, like operating real small businesses, because of a problem that the Trudeau government created with its own tax initiatives when they first got in power. So, okay, so now the BC government is trying the same game, and it, on incomes over 150,000. Well, that's, geez, I don't. Boy, that's if that's wealthy, look out, because I don't know how you attract a top-notch software developer to lead your software development team, and you don't, and you're paying them. You're going to pay them less than $150,000 in Vancouver to live? I don't think so. And yeah, these people are wealthy and have to pay more in taxes. This is a very, very, very disappointing move. Not unexpected, but it's going in the wrong direction. Taxing contribution to society, taxing work, taxing participation in the workforce is exactly the wrong public policy direction. It should be going the other way, and you want more people working. You want people to do the extra hour of work. You want people to to spend an extra few hours every week trying to solve that algorithm that you have to do on your code, to make it a better application, to spend more time in the lab thinking about how to do a breakthrough. I mean, this all requires motivation, and people are not robots. And I'm sorry, when you increase taxes on people making over 150,000, you're taxing a lot of people who are willing to work hard and contribute. But if you tell them you don't want that, and when you tax something, you're saying we want less of it, you're going to get less of it, unless the tax accountants can find ways around it. And then the government has to, it's like whack-a-mole, and you go and you whack down this brake, and then you whack down that brake, and you have, your system becomes even more complicated, and the only people that end up winning are the accountants, and and the lawyers, and that's what we're seeing in Ottawa right now, with this initiative to raise taxes on small business. And you're going to see it in BC with the new NDP government, which has got all sorts of tricks up its sleeves, it seems.
Is this sending a message from the Trudeau and BC governments that in the eyes of the people who create jobs and businesses, they're just not welcome?
I think that's collateral damage to their main spin, and that is, we're making, and the NDP and the Trudeau government are, have come out with this sort of class warfare narrative that there are a lot of people in society who aren't paying their fair share, and we're going to get them, so that we can help the middle class. Well, I'm sorry, $150,000 in Vancouver. If you think somebody making $150,000 in Vancouver is super rich, I think that may have been the case 30 years ago. But when you look at the home prices in Vancouver, a salary of $150,000, won't qualify you for the type of mortgage you need to get a single family home. If you assume that someone's rich can afford a single family home, so none of this makes any sense from a societal point of view, I'm afraid, unless you think you can redistribute wealth without any behavioral impacts, and that's just not going to be the case. You're going to get less people working, or you're going to get more, tax engineering, which is not productive for the economy. So, the signal to these people who make those incomes, a lot, for the most part, are hard workers, and they want to contribute. But the message to them is, don't contribute as much and don't work as hard. Because when you put a tax on something, John Horgan and Justin Trudeau, when you put a tax on something, you're sending a signal you want less of that that activity to happen. And that's the message they're sending to the job creators. That's a Republican theme. I don't, I prefer to frame this as people who want to contribute and contribute hard. You're sending a signal to these people want to contribute to society, saying, no, don't contribute as much. Take a break, right? Don't work as hard. Stay under. Don't strive to earn a big salary. Don't strive for that next breakthrough, because we want a royalty on it. And it's a very disturbing trend. And it's all, of course, wrapped up in tax fairness, which is all just spin and propaganda. There's no tax fairness in any tax code in Canada. It's full of favoritism, and I don't see any government really trying to deal with that. It's all just nitpicking, cherry picking, and what you can spin in terms of your election platform and what you think people will swallow up. And it's really quite cynical, actually. I really hope Ottawa takes the lead, and when they get into Parliament this fall, that they tone down their class rhetoric and they really start to get into the substance of it. And I think the Trudeau government may actually have overplayed their hand here. Now, I know when you listen to the CBC and some of these, I call them the Ivory Tower Coalition, which are a group of economists, the CBC, a couple of National Post columnists, they're all buying into this sort of tax fairness closing loophole narrative, right? Well, we'll see, because the Liberals have given Andrew Scheer, who was really not on the radar screen, this summer until the Liberals brought this tax measure in against small business, and it's a tax raise against small business. There's no other way to really describe it. That's what it is. In fact, it will be a tax increase on small business. Now, Andrew Scheer has revealed a new shadow cabinet, and it was actually quite brilliant what he did. He put in from a political, tactical perspective, he brought in a finance critic, Pierre Poilievre, who will really hold Bill Morneau to account on what he's doing here. And I don't think the Liberals know what's coming. I think it'll be interesting to see if the Tory finance critic gets the nickname Pitbull Poilievre, but we'll see. I expect Bill Morneau will be on his feet a lot in the House of Commons, and I don't think it's going to be a fun ride for him.
When governments hike taxes on people, is the result higher revenues?
Well, it's interesting. I was looking at the budget, the BC budget documents, and here they're raising taxes on people, but they're actually estimating, Jim, that the tax revenue is going to be less. It's going to be $9 billion in personal income tax for the next year, and last year it was 9.7. So I don't know. This is a backdoor admission by the NDP that already their policies are failing, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
The BC government in its budget said it's going to end annual financial reporting on its various sectors, yet they promise they will be more transparent than the previous government. How do you do that if you end annual reporting?
Well, the annual reporting of and this is not just a problem in BC, but it's a problem, I think, throughout our parliamentary system here in Canada. And these annual reports by these agencies are terrible. They're written by PR people in these agencies. There's some financial statements using government accounting standards thrown together. They're tabled in Parliament once a year, and no one really deals with them because not all, but most people that elected to Parliament are lawyers or government background people. Not all, but there's a good chunk of that. Of the legislative body does not have financial statement experience. So basically these reports are bad enough. Now, you could be cynical and say, well, they're so bad we're not going to do them anymore. But, really, come on. This is another area that needs a real shake-up, and it's disappointing that the NDP, that's one thing they could have done without costing any money is improve financial reporting. Now, maybe they're going to replace it with something else, but why they're doing that, again, that seems to be going in the wrong direction. So this government, with its with its razor thin now working majority because it's in a coalition with the Greens, they're really we really see the direction they're going, and they seem to be putting the province in reverse already.
Could Trudeau and Horgan push Canada and BC into recession with their tax policies?
Well, the Trudeau government, when it came out of the block with its first budget, actually brought in a net tax cut. We talked about Bill Morneau increased taxes on the upper income, but they cut substantially in the middle, and that was a net tax cut, and they brought in a stimulus plan. So the Trudeau government actually has got the economy on a pretty good roll right now. And so I'm scratching my head here, actually, with what they're doing on the small business side, because it is going to have an impact. And what the Ivory Tower Coalition don't understand is that you impact confidence and behavior with these types of these theoretical initiatives that are dreamt up by tax officials. You know, not everything is motivated by, you know, simple spreadsheets and complicated charts and input-output diagrams. At the end of the day, small business is driven by people. And if you send a signal that, no, we don't want you to have a family enterprise, you know, we want you to structure it like, you know, a Fortune 500 company would structure its company, because everything has to be identical, you know, they're going to be in for a big shock, and it will have an impact on growth. So I hope they shelve this whole thing, and let's do tax reform right in Ottawa. Let's look at the whole thing, because they're going to get burned anyways, by a group in the electorate. No matter what they do, they might as well look at the whole thing and really do tax fairness. But they're not doing tax fairness now, Jim. They're picking and choosing, you know, who's going to pay more tax. And these initiatives that they're doing with small business, they are a tax increase. It will slow down the economy. And you put that on top with the CPP changes that are coming in 2019. So, you know, the Liberals are really undoing a lot of the progress they've made. It's really quite astounding, actually.
Would Canada be a richer country under nationalism or globalism?
Well, trade, I mean, real free trade benefits everyone. And, you know, the problem that Western democracies have had, you know, and I think even more so in the U.S. and Canada, is, you know, how do you split the gains between the winners and the losers? And, you know, there's a good case to be made that the winners should compensate the losers, you know, because when you have freer trade, you know, you have more competition, and some countries with a better, you know, advantage over certain things are going to take over the market share. But look, you can compensate those people, and you can have a discussion about that. And I think in Canada we've done a slightly better job through our institutions in doing that than the United States. And the United States has a huge issue there, and that's why we saw Donald Trump get elected. But in general, it can be better, provided that you know, it's the losers are compensated, and that you know, governments are on watch for these things. Like in British Columbia and in Vancouver, unfortunately, you know, the previous BC Liberal government was asleep at the switch when it came to housing affordability, and a lot of that was driven by international flows into the local real estate market, and they didn't do anything about it, and you know, they found themselves in opposition. So, you know, we'll see what the NDP do on that front. We're still waiting. I think they're still studying the matter, and it's a big problem that's occurred over a number of years. And by the way, it's not just the BC Liberal that fell asleep at the switch on housing affordability in Vancouver. It's also the federal government. I mean, most of the policies that were involved with the problem were federal policies, you know, on the immigration side, and in particular, and on, you know, lowering interest rates. A lot of that, most of that was driven by Ottawa. Now, the BC government didn't do anything in response until it was too late, but we'll see what the NDP do. But yeah, it's, on balance, you know, it's better to be more globally focused, but, you know, governments could play a constructive role in making sure that there is a true sense of you know, fairness in compensating and helping out the losers from that. So you know, it's just not wise to sort of leave it sort of winner take all. As you know, we live in democracy, and you know, at some point you have to take the community's welfare into account when you're making those kinds of moves.
Is Gerald Celente sly like a fox, taking the Speaker of the BC House position? He controls the flow in the House, and when Christie's seat is filled, he can quit the position of Speaker in time to help vote out the government.
Well, we're going to take bets on that. I would not bet on that outcome. I think I don't know this gentleman. I've never met him, but I would assume he probably likes the job he's got and would probably stay there until he loses that job. So we will have to see how that plays out. But I think there's probably if the NDP really start to unwind the economy here, and given their first steps, I think there's a very good chance it's going to happen. Mr. Plex could be facing a recall in his own riding, and that would be an interesting dynamic. I think that's more likely than him leaving the chair and going and voting against the people who gave him his position. Well, stranger things have happened, but I would put the odds of a recall higher than that.
If you were Premier John Horgan's top advisor for a day, what advice would you give him?
Well, I would say stop taxing success. And you inherited a big surplus. Yes, it's not going to, you can't expect it to be there all the time. Work with what you have. Don't increase taxes, and work within your means. And also, focus on housing affordability, and don't try and do too much. And I think they're probably, given their razor-thin majority, they would be better to focus on housing affordability and work on what to do with the Site C situation, and stop. I think they've kind of dealt with Kinder Morgan by putting it, into the court system. That was a hot potato for them. So I would just caution him, just have modest goals here, and the reason being is because in government it's very hard to get things done. And by trying to do too much, you're going to make too many mistakes, make too many enemies, and even though you're trying to make your base happy, they won't be happy with half measures and failed measures. So, might as well work on doing a couple of things right and establish yourself as a good financial manager. But they're off to a pretty lousy start on that.
And Ted, before we go, give us a little bit of good news here from your organization.
Well, one of the very positive developments in the Canadian market in the last few weeks has been signs that Canadian stocks may be gaining some momentum. We track the 50 stocks that insiders prefer in Canada through the Canadian Insider Index, which you can see on CanadianInsider.com in real time. And what this index does is track these 50 growth and value stocks, and now that index has moved over its 150-day moving average. What does that mean, Jim? It means it's in a medium. It's striving to be in a medium-term uptrend. So let's see if that continues. That would be good news for the Canadian economy. And let's hope that governments in Canada keep the growth story alive and kicking. And maybe we'll see the Canadian stock market surprise on the upside here in the second half of the year.
Ted, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
Well, thanks for having me back, Jim.
My guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of InkResearch.ca, their website, CanadianInsider.com. And that wraps up our show for this week. We'd like to thank our guests, Ross Clark, Gerald Celente, Ted Dixon, and thank you for listening. If you have any questions for us, you can email us at info@howstreet.com. And coming up right after the show, we'll have company showcase updates with Larry Reaugh, CEO of American Manganese, and Penny Green, the president of GlancePay.com. I'm Jim Goddard. We'll be back next week with more This Week in Money.
Comments made on This Week in Money are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. This Week in Money is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated. Executive producer is Tom Allen. Welcome to Company Showcase, an advertising feature on HoweStreet.com.
I'm your host, Jim Goddard. We're speaking with Larry Reaugh. He's the CEO and president of American Manganese. Welcome back to the show, Larry.
Well, thanks, Jim.
As we speak, you've just come out with a new news release. What was in that release?
Well, it was a update on where we're at, and we finally completed the button cells for all of our various cathode chemistries, so that's a milestone. And we talked a bit about some of the uses, because there's a wide spectrum of uses for these lithium-ion batteries. For example, for high-power batteries, you would use the lithium manganese. And for high energy, lithium cobalt. And for a combination of power and energy, you would use the nickel manganese cobalt and nickel cobalt aluminum. And these are not just in electric vehicle batteries, but all of our handheld devices and tablets and all those things that require lithium-ion batteries are in there. Power tools are big, and so there's a huge market out there. And we also mentioned that the projections are for the amount of batteries that are going to be produced in the next, I guess it would be 2020, 2022, could be $69 billion. So I like to say, Jim, let's do a little rule of thumb thinking here. If the cathode materials makes up 15% to 20% of the cathode, of the cost of the battery, then you're looking at $10 to $15 billion in cathode material alone. That's pretty staggering. And 2022 is not that far away. So we think we're in the right place at the right time. Up until yesterday, we had the metals performing very well. As far as I know, the price of cobalt's still $61,000 a kilogram, and but nickel's down, and it was at $12,000 a ton. And I'm sorry, but I said $61,000 a kilogram. That's $61,000 a ton and for the cobalt, but the nickel slid a bit today, so it's no longer at $12,000 a ton, but that's a moving target. If you look at the fundamentals, these prices in the base metals should not have slipped yet. So it's an exciting arena. And we also talked about something we've never talked about before in the press release, and that is we're looking and we're going to do some research on recycling the graphite from the anode, and that involves a copper foil with the graphite on it that's pasted on it, right? Now we have to disassemble each individual battery at some point. That requires that we peel the battery back and remove the foils. Now, the copper foil has the anode material, which is a graphite, and the aluminum foil has the cathode materials, which could be nickel, manganese cobalt, or lithium cobalt, or lithium cobalt aluminum. And we remove those foils, and then we dissolve the cathode material, or potentially the anode material, into separate tanks. And seeing as we're already there and we remove the copper foil, there's not a lot of money in the graphite. I think it's around $1,150, $1,200 a ton. And but that's not a lot of money. But if you're already there and you've removed the foils, why not take that extra step and some hopefully just simple flotation would give you back the graphite. And that would make us 100% closed loop, environmentally friendly process. So that was one thing that was brought up, and that's something we would be looking at doing sometime after we file the patents. And around the time we look at the pilot plant, we could do some bench scale work on getting the anode material, the graphite, off of the copper foils, and I think that would be a big plus. Who knows? It may even pay for the reagents in the process. So I think that that's, just a message out there that we want to address 100% of everything. Some people just talk about recycling cobalt because that's where the high value is. But what do you do with the rest of it? And so, I think that really AMY's offering a solution that if we can make it work with the graphite is 100% closed loop.
Larry, where is this pilot plant going to be built?
It'll be built probably in Cometco's yard. When you're looking at a concentrated material, what you're talking about is 100% purity, or 100% of the various cathode materials or the anode materials. In that case, you're looking at moving that through a circuit and getting it back 100%. Sounds simple, but it's not. And but we can do that. And so you're not looking at a huge plant. You're looking at something. I said 35 tons per day. Well, I'll stick with that number. But who knows? You could have a plant that's 10 tons per day or 40 tons per day. And but it would be built and tested right in the yards at Cometco Research, because those are the geniuses that put this together.
Where is that plant?
In Richmond, in British Columbia here.
Do you have any idea how many people would work there?
Just off the top of my head, and don't hold me to it, but, I couldn't envision more than 20 or 30 people.
But, of course, if it's a success, that's great news for the company and your expansion.
Well, the more we can trim everything back, and then the size of the plant certainly reduces the capital requirements considerably. And, a modernized plant with as few employees as you can get, certainly again reduces the costs and brings profitability to the company. Now, that said and done, that's just one little plant. And, but I can envision, hundreds of these plants around the world. So the, employment numbers go way, way up after a while. And, because you just gotta multiply that by, if it takes 20 to run a plant and you have 100 plants, then you're looking at, 2,000 employees around the world. And if you got 1,000 plants, well, 20,000 employees around the world. That's what you have to look at. But the profitability of each plant should be great.
Larry, for new listeners, can you maybe explain what American Manganese does?
American Manganese is a critical metals company that developed a patented process for, and this is a breakthrough disruptive technology that I don't think the company's ever been really recognized for, to actually compete competitively with the Chinese and produce an electrolytic manganese metals and dioxides. And Cometco's CEO was looking at that process a couple of years or a year and a half ago, and he said, hey, I think this process, with some changes and everything like that, could actually recycle the cathode materials out of the battery. So now our focus is on recycling. But we also have the mining properties that have cobalt and gold on them, and we have a rare earth property. So we're quite diversified. Manganese looks like it's making a comeback, which could reawaken our project down in Arizona. So, it seems like finally American Manganese is the right place at the right time, and I think the shareholders would be very happy with the stock today because it closed up to 19 cents, and it's been sitting around 14.5 to 16.5 for months. Now it's, it looks like it might want to break out. I'm not going to say it is, but I'm saying it looks like it might, because we're starting to get interest out of Europe in the market.
Larry, where is American Manganese traded and under what symbols?
It's traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol AMY. It's traded in the U.S. under the symbol AMY.V, and it's traded in Frankfurt under the symbol 2AM. We have a website out there called AmericanManganeseInc.com. If somebody wants to contact me, they can contact me either through my email address or my phone, which is LREAUGH, the spelling of my name, at AMY, the symbol for manganese.com. Or they can phone me at 778-574-4444.
Larry, thanks for the update.
Okay, you're welcome.
My guest has been Larry Reaugh, CEO and President of American Manganese. I'm Jim Goddard. We were speaking on September 14th.
Comments made on Company Showcase are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Company Showcase is a production of How Street Media Incorporated. Welcome to Company Showcase, an advertising feature on HowStreet.com.
I'm your host, Jim Goddard. We're speaking with Penny Green, COO, President and Co-founder of Glance Technologies Incorporated. Penny, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here.
You have some brand new news for us. What's going on?
Yes, we do. We're very excited today to announce we've signed our first restaurant in the United States, which is Cobalt Mexican Cucina, and it's located in California, to use the Glance Pay app. And we've also set up now our head office in Silicon Valley.
Wow, that's a huge step. Why did you decide to enter the U.S. market now?
Well, we're very, very lucky, Jim, to be able to expand into the U.S. just 1 year after we launched, because I don't know if you remember, we launched September 7th, 1 year ago, and that's also when we did our IPO. And we've had such a tremendous year. We've expanded quickly across Canada, now in 5 provinces, and we were really getting a demand from the U.S., both inquiries from investors and also merchants inquiring as to when we would be there. And we decided that we would focus first on the West Coast, partly because we're on the West Coast and it just kind of made sense. But also a lot of the merchants that were calling in were from California. So we decided to start there. And we signed our first merchant over the phone, which was kind of exciting. And the other thing is because we've really done well with the chain restaurants in Canada. We've now signed up, about 6 chains in Canada. So that includes Ricky's Restaurants, which has 90 locations, all the way from Ontario out here to BC. We signed Donnelly Group, which is an award-winning hospitality group that has 20 locations from BC to Ontario. We signed Famoso Pizza, which has 29 locations. We signed Mr. Mike's, which has 36 locations. And then we signed a couple smaller chains, but that are notable, including Fresh, which is a very successful organic food chain in Toronto, and the Thai House, which is a very well-respected, very famous restaurant chain here in British Columbia.
Are you just going after restaurants in the U.S. now?
Well, we're starting with restaurants because our app was originally designed to work in restaurants, and one of the patents that we have pending is specifically for the restaurant industry. But soon after we launched, we realized that there was big demand from the quick serve and from retail as well for our technology, which includes the mobile payment app as well as the very sophisticated anti-fraud technology. And so we developed a second, we submitted a second patent on another invention which works for quick serve, and so that works for all of retail. So what we've done recently is we've started to enter into licensing agreements with companies that have the reach into other verticals that we don't anticipate being able to get to ourselves. So we've done that with Canopy Financial. That's a company that we did a $1 million licensing deal with so that they could access the marijuana industry using our technology. But also we invested in them so that we're a minority shareholder and that we can also benefit if they're successful in that vertical. We've recently done the same thing with ActivePay so that we can access the health and wellness market. And those deals were primarily intended for the Canadian market. So now that we've entered the U.S. market, there's so many other opportunities for us in terms of our licensing.
Can you tell us exactly how your licensing model works?
Certainly. So typically what we will do is we will provide a intellectual property license to use all of our technology and our existing app within a specific jurisdiction or a specific vertical. For example, right now we're live in Canada. We've just announced our expansion into the U.S. for the Glance Pay app, but we're not yet in the UK, we're not in Australia, we're not in Germany. So we're starting to reach out and we're starting to get inquiries from companies in other countries that want to be able to use our cutting-edge technology for mobile payments in those countries. If we do that, we'll license to them the rights to use our app within the territory. If we do that, we'll probably still be running the app, and it will probably, all the payments will still clear through us, but that company will be responsible for marketing the app and managing it within the territory.
Penny, for our new listeners, can you explain what exactly Glance Pay is, how it works, and how safe it is to use?
Certainly. Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, which is a streamlined payment system that revolutionizes how smartphone users choose where to dine, where to shop, order goods and services, make payments, access digital receipts, redeem digital deals, earn rewards, and interact with merchants. So we've been building a valuable network of merchants and consumers, and we offer targeted in-app marketing, geo-targeted digital coupons, social media marketing combined with in-app marketing, as well as customer feedback and custom rewards programs. So our mobile payment system is consisting of proprietary technology, which uses user apps that are available for free download in Apple and Android formats. We also have a merchant manager app, a large-scale technology hosting environment that has been built to scale up to potentially billions of dollars a year, and a sophisticated anti-fraud technology with lightning-fast payment processing.
Basically, Penny, is this a process where I can take a picture of my restaurant bill with my phone, it's paid for, my accounting department is updated, and so on?
Yes, absolutely. It's very easy to use. When you're in a restaurant that's signed up with Glance Pay, you simply take a picture of the bill, and it's automatically cleared through your credit card, and invoices sent to your email, which can be automatically forwarded to your accountant, and you also are accumulating rewards whenever you use the Glance Pay system.
How hard is it for a person to sign up?
It's very simple. If you've ever used Uber, it's pretty much the same process. You download the app for free, you put in some basic information about yourself, such as your name and your phone number, and you enter your credit card information.
Is that on your website?
Yes, you can go to our website, glancepay.com, to download the free app in Android or iOS, or you can go to your Apple Store or your Android Store and download it for free.
Where is Glance Technologies traded and under what symbols?
In Canada, Glance Technologies is traded under the symbol GET, G-E-T, and that's on the Canadian Securities Exchange. In the U.S., we're traded under the symbol GLNNF on the OTCQB.
Penny, thanks a lot for the update.
You're very welcome, Jim. It's been a pleasure.
I've been speaking with Penny Green, COO and co-founder of Glance Technologies Incorporated. Her website, glancepay.com. We were speaking on September 12th. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Company Showcase are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Company Showcase is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.